Hi friends, welcome to Beautifully Bookish Bethany. I have been keeping a huge secret from you for the last couple of months, and I'm so excited because I can finally reveal what it is. For 2 months, ranging from the beginning of September to the end of October, different creators have been making all of my thumbnails. And I've been vlogging to see how it goes and how different thumbnail styles perform. Listen, I've been wanting to share this secret project for so long, and huge thank you goes out to all of the 20+ creators who helped me out, did incredible work on all of these beautiful thumbnails, and agreed to help me with this project. So huge thanks to all of them. We've got a wide range of channel types, channel sizes, and you can expect to see a number of familiar faces, but we are going to do a deep dive into all of the thumbnails that have been made and how they performed on my channel relative to similar videos. This was a really interesting experiment, and I do think there are some things that I'm taking away from it that we're going to discuss at the end of the video. And the only people who knew I was doing any of this, besides the creators I asked to participate, were some of my patrons and channel members, and I didn't even tell them until we were a month into the project. So it's been fun. I know people are excited to see this reveal video, and I'm going to draw your attention to the thumbnail for this reveal video, which was also created by somebody else. Here's the gorgeous image that you all just clicked on to see what I was hiding from you. This thumbnail was created by Mara at Books Like Whoa. Thank you so much to Mara. I can tell a lot of work went into this. She had all of the different thumbnails that were created over the months. Don't worry, we're gonna go through every one of them. If you wanna play a little bit of a game with me, you could pause this video and go take a look through at my recent videos over the last couple months and see if you can guess who you think made some of the thumbnails. It's been fun seeing some of my patrons guess, sometimes right, sometimes not. But if you think that you can figure it out, feel free to pause this video, go take a look, make your predictions, and then come right back here. Odds are you're already familiar with her, but this is Mara's channel. I think you can definitely see how her style influenced the thumbnail she made for this video, but you should go check her out if you aren't already. She reads pretty prolifically and across a wide range of genres. I have put together a playlist of every single video that was included in this project, and I'm going to be going back and tagging the creators who made those thumbnails in the descriptions of those videos, as well as linking all of them in the video description down below. If you want to see the playlist of all of the videos where different creators made the thumbnails, I will have it linked up above, and I will also mention it again at the end of this video. Now I'm going to send you all the way back to Bethany of the past. This is the beginning of September. We've just started the project, and we're going to talk about how it's going so far. See you soon. Today is the start of a 2-month-long super secret video project, and I'm so curious how many people start to catch on with what I'm doing or like figure out there's something weird going on before this video goes up. So this is the first day of the project. So I've got over 20 amazing creators who are booktubers and author tubers who have agreed to make a thumbnail for me over the next 2-month period. And we're gonna see how this goes. I'm so curious to see, number one, what are the different styles people have, because I think I've got a wide range of creators with different thumbnail styles, with different channel aesthetics, different channel sizes, and I'm really interested to see how these different thumbnails perform on my channel with different videos. It is a little bit weird because I basically don't have any control over the aesthetics of what my thumbnails are looking like for the next 2 months. It's gonna be, hey, do this how you want in your own style. Here's some pictures on what the video is. Have at it. And like, we'll see. So as you're watching this, I'm so curious. Comment below. Did you notice something was weird? Did you wonder if I was doing a project? Are you shocked? I don't know. Let me know. So today is the first day of the project. It is September 6th, and my first thumbnail that was created by somebody else went up. This was for a live stream where I was unhauling books and adding them to my Pango shop. And the person who created this thumbnail was Jessica Williamson from the Hext Library. Here's Jessica's channel. Go check her out if you haven't already, and thank you, Jessica, for making a thumbnail. She does a mix of writing and planning content as well as other book-related content, reviews, etc. And since it's NaNoWriMo as I'm recording this, she's super busy doing lots of writing sprints. So I like this thumbnail. It is a little bit different than what I normally do, but I don't think it's so dramatically different that people would notice because I do play with thumbnail styles a little more. I think as the months go on, we're gonna have more and more thumbnails that look really different from my style, so I'm curious if people start catching on at some point. We're gonna see how this goes. The live stream ended pretty recently, so I don't have a lot to say about how it's performing so far. I've got a really great lineup of people. Let's see how it goes. We are only just beginning. Checking in because the next 2 thumbnails have gone live so people can see them. Still waiting to see if and when anybody catches on to what I'm doing. We'll see. I'm curious to see who figures it out or at what point they figure it out. We're only 3 in so far, so maybe it's a little early. I probably jumped the gun, but I'm curious to see what happens. The answer is nobody guessed, or at least nobody guessed directly to me. As I mentioned a month in, I did finally reveal this to some of my patrons, and they were excited, and there were a couple people who were like, oh, I did notice some weird things about your thumbnails, but I just sort of brushed it off. So yeah, nothing in my comments where people were guessing, but so first up, I had a big NetGalley update video go up, and Shay from Shay Geeks Out made the thumbnail for that video, so here's that. Shay's channel is really great if you're looking for good manga recommendations. She also does a lot of romance and some other books, but if you notice, she definitely has that little leaf detail on her thumbnails that she put on the one she made for me. I actually really love the thumbnail she came up with. I love the fall vibes. I think it goes with the decor that I've changed to. And it's again something that is not totally in my style, but close enough to my style that people might mistake it, versus the next one, which is very different. So I feel like when we start getting ones that are much more iconic, and when I start getting some of the bigger creators who've agreed to participate making thumbnails for me, we might start getting more questions. So I'm curious to see at what point people figure out what I'm doing. I'll say that both of the first 2 videos that have gone live are performing well within typical bounds, so nothing that I'm seeing that's super unusual, which is cool. And then the final one that is live but hasn't actually happened yet is a live stream to launch this trip that I'm hosting to the UK in 2024. So Christy made the thumbnail for that. Here's that thumbnail.
Hello, I'm Christy from the channel Christy's Cozy Corner, and Bethany asked me to make the thumbnail for the live show that she did about her London trip. So all the information that you need to know about it, as well as a Q&A. So the 2 pictures that I took for this thumbnail came from Bethany's Instagram, and one of those pictures actually was one that she had already photoshopped. Like, she took a picture of herself and photoshopped it in a London setting. So I saw it and I was like, this is perfect. This is the picture that I'm going to use. So just put those all together and added some text. I included as much information about the live as possible. And in retrospect, maybe I put in a little bit too much because I do think it looks a little bit crowded, so if I had to do it again, I would probably reduce the text a little bit. But overall, I still like the way that it came out. Thank you so much for including me in this project, Bethany, and I can't wait to see how everything turns out.
Here's Christy's channel, Christy's Cozy Corner. She is a really new booktuber and super sweet. She's got this adorable font that she does for all of her thumbnails. It's really cute. She's got a lot of great books that she reads, wide variety. Definitely go and give her a follow if you haven't already. I love it. It's really cute, but it doesn't look like anything I would normally make. I'm wondering if people are gonna see this and think, is she trying a new style? What's going on? This isn't her usual thing. I don't know. I'm giving full creative freedom to the people making these thumbnails and just kind of seeing what they come up with. So I think this is adorable. This live stream doesn't actually happen for a couple more days, so we'll see how it does with the click-through rate once it is live. And maybe once I get to the end of the month, I will look at the longer term click-through rates of these videos just to compare and contrast. I am just wondering how much of a difference thumbnails make, because I do have a couple of people in this lineup who are bigger channels and get a lot of clicks on their videos typically, and I'm really interested to see what they do with my thumbnails and if I see a similar performance, if it's something about the thumbnail type specifically or the way they approach thumbnails, or if it's not. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it may not affect anything, which I'm okay with too. I just think it's a fun experiment. So I will check back in once I have more thumbnails that have gone live. It has been a minute and I wanted to do a check-in because I've had a few more videos go up. I'm a little surprised I haven't gotten any comments or questions or anything, or people wondering, at least to me, what I'm doing with my thumbnails. So I think by now I probably expected to get more, but it's also possible that people just don't notice as much like what I'm doing with my thumbnails, which is fine. It has been really interesting to see how some of the different videos have been performing. I'm not gonna get too deep in the weeds here because I kind of want to wait till I have a little bit more data at different points in the project. So at the end of September, I'm planning to do a little more of a deep dive into the stats of how did everything perform in September, and then at the end of the project, we'll take a look at that there as well. I will say the biggest surprise has been how well my Nashville vlog is performing, and I can't tell if it's because of the thumbnail, which is really different from anything I've done before. It does definitely stand out. It's eye-catching. It's got a full body shot of me, which I don't usually do in my thumbnails. So it might partly be the thumbnail, but also it might be partly the title, the fact that it's me and a lot of other pretty popular creators who were hanging out together. You know, like there were a lot of other elements that might make people more interested in this vlog in particular than they usually are in my vlogs, but I have been surprised at how high the numbers for that video have been relative to how vlogs that I put up usually do. And part of it may be the thumbnail. So I'm also surprised nobody has picked up on it, because Izzy made the thumbnail from the Nashville vlog and I think was gonna make her thumbnail very similar, but so far I haven't heard anything. I don't know if she's heard anything, but I just think that's really interesting. Here's Izzy's channel. She does lots of romance, Romancelandia news, and manga, and she's got this really cute style, which I think you can see, and soon you're going to see the thumbnail she made for her Nashville vlog, and it is in fact very similar to the one that she made for me, which is fun. The video I just put up today, Alex from Pucks and Paperbacks did the thumbnail for a New York City itinerary where I went and visited queer-owned bookstores and restaurants, which is also kind of lower in terms of views, but then that's not surprising because anything that has queer or LGBT in the title typically underperforms relative to my other videos, so I can't say that I'm shocked. I don't really think it's specific to the thumbnail, but it's just interesting to see how things are performing. Alex is a trans booktuber who is always doing a lot of fun, creative ideas for videos. He reads a lot of YA, especially queer contemporary YA, so if you're looking for those kinds of recommendations, this is a great channel to check out. So that's where we're at. I don't know how many people have seen it yet, but I have had Michelle from Thor Wants Another Letter do the thumbnail for the next Circle of Magic video, and I think the way that they did it is much more similar to my normal style, so I don't know how much that's gonna stand out to people, but maybe it will. We'll see.
Hey honey West J, it is Michelle from Thor Wants Another Letter, and I decided to design the thumbnail like this because, like Bethany, I like things to look cohesive, so I still wanted it to look a little bit like her usual live show thumbnails, but I added the gradient effect on the text because I've been obsessed with doing those, and I don't know, I just thought it would look cute, and I also added some luminance to it, and then there's some little stars around. Either way, I hope that you liked it, and I had fun doing it, so thank you for letting me have fun.
Michelle is an Indigenous booktuber who reads a lot of great books, and they also do some bullet journal content that's always really cute and really creative. You should definitely go and check them out if you haven't already, and you can see what they were talking about with some of these color gradients. One of the big ones that I'm curious about, though, is my next video is going to be my vlog for Sci-Fi September, and I'm having Reads with Rachel do the thumbnail for that one. Rachel is really good at doing clickbait thumbnails. That's kind of her bread and butter. And so I'm very interested to see, number one, what she comes up with for that thumbnail, but number two, how it performs. So that I think is going to be an interesting thing to look at. We're getting close to the end of September, and then I'll do a segment where I take a bit of a closer look at some of the stats of how things were doing in the first month. But it's been fun, and I've got to say, huge thank you to all of the amazing creators who have been helping me out with this project. I appreciate you all so much. I know it's a lot, and sometimes it's kind of a fast turnaround. Everybody has just been absolutely incredible. Oh, the other one, I don't know if I mentioned in my last clip, but the mid-month wrap-up thumbnail that Brianna from Fourth Paws in a Book made seems to be doing pretty well. Brianna was actually kind enough to make me 2 thumbnails because I needed another one last minute. So appreciative of that. She did this mid-month wrap-up thumbnail, which I love, and it's been doing really well. We'll talk more about that. And she did this live stream thumbnail for a Goodreads anticipated releases reaction video, which I also love. It's another really different style to what I normally do, but it's been interesting to see how they've done. Brianna does a lot of games and really creative content. She was the creator of the amazing readathon, that entirely wild readathon I did in August, where I read more books than I've ever read before. So she's always coming up with something new. She reads a lot of romance, a lot of fantasy, queer books, kind of a wide range of things. What I haven't done yet is look at click-through rates. So that's going to be part of what I'm going to look at statistically when we come back here in a couple weeks. So stay tuned, we'll see how it goes, and if anybody starts to notice what's going on. Hello, I'm doing all the fall vibes today. I have my mushroom dress on, and I thought this would be a good time to do another update. I'm not sure what I said in my last update or the video clips that I mentioned, so let's cover a few here that have gone up recently. And then now that it's been a little over a month since the start of this project, I want to take a look back at some of the stats and do some comparisons to see how some different things have performed. First up, we have my October TBR thumbnail. This was very kindly done by Lizelle Sambury, who is the author of one of my favorite books of the year, Delicious Monsters, which is fantastic upper YA horror, like so good. And I'm really, really happy for her too, because it also was a Barnes & Noble YA book club pick for the month, which, like, yes, I'm thrilled for her. She made this really adorable thumbnail. I love all of the fall vibes. I feel like this works really well for an October thumbnail, and it's a little bit different from anything that I've done personally in the past. I think it's really cute and really fun, and I've seen other people have this vibe. Lizelle is a traditionally published author with a few books out, and this is her page. She is an author tuber, so she talks about writing. She's really great, and as you can see, she does some of this cute little like drawn-on look to her vlogs, kind of similar to what she did for the thumbnail that she made for me. So I can see the similarities. Maybe you can tell she did it. So looking at the click-through rate of this in comparison to my last couple of TBR videos, it's pretty similar. It's maybe slightly lower than usual, which could be that maybe this isn't a style people are expecting from me. I wonder if this is a style that maybe works better for people who do a lot of like aesthetic videos, which is not something that I do very many of. I could see that being the case, but either way, I think it's a really cute thumbnail. Then another author tuber, Lindsay Puckett, did my book haul for September. This is the thumbnail that she came up with. And again, I really like it. I think it's cool. I like how she has some of the book titles blurred out in the background that you're gonna see in the haul. I'm really impressed at how much work went into this. It's not exactly like a style that I've done before. I think it looks really cool though. Lindsay is an author tuber with 2 traditionally published middle grade fantasy novels that are super cute. She does vlogs and writing content, and as you can see, her style is definitely similar to the thumbnail she made for me in terms of font, in terms of little star things and arrows, and she's done some of the same blurred out books in her thumbnails, so you can tell that it was her style. Now, what's really interesting about this is that the click-through rate is actually higher than what I've been seeing for my last couple of book hauls, which means that something about this this is appealing to people more than the other ones. I do wonder if it's partly because you do get a little bit of a peek at what some of the books in the haul might be, whereas normally you just see the packages. So it's possible that that's drawing in some people who are like, ooh, I wonder what that is. Also, it's a haul, clearly it's like big bold letters all across behind my head, which I think is maybe more eye-catching. So that I do find interesting, and I'm gonna keep that in mind going forward, because this does seem to be performing a little bit better than how my thumbnails usually do for book hauls. Then Amanda from The Naughty Librarian absolutely killed it with this thumbnail for my September wrap-up. I love it, and also it's been performing really well. This has been definitely performing better than usual. My end of month wrap-ups are usually my most viewed videos of the month, especially immediately. These tend to do really well for me, but this thumbnail I think was especially attention grabbing, and I think it's funny. It's like, oh, that didn't go well, and it makes me wonder, because I want to go back as well and talk about how things went with the one that Rachel from Reads with Rachel did for me, that if there's a way for me to sort of pull something out of the video that is, you know, a little clickbaity maybe, but more dramatic, it's possible that that could do better. I think that's interesting. So let's look at my Space Opera September video, because this is the one that Rachel did for me. I was actually pretty impressed at how this video performed. My vlogs typically don't do great. They tend to underperform in comparison to my other videos, and this one did a little bit better than I was expecting. I want to go and look at the click-through rate in comparison to some of my other recent vlogs. The click-through rate on my last couple of similar type of reading vlogs have been much lower than this one. They don't perform well at all. And again, this is making me think, maybe if I did thumbnails that were a little bit more dramatic and attention getting, perhaps more people would actually want to try watching them. Now, I don't think that my reading vlogs are ever going to be among my top performing videos, unless it's like a really interesting challenge type thing that gets people's interest. They're just not my highest performing videos. But what this does show me is that a better thumbnail could certainly help. Probably already familiar with her, but this is Rachel's page, and you can see what I'm saying. I feel like what she did for the thumbnail for me is very similar to thumbnail styles that she does on her own page, and I'm guessing that people who knew what was going on would probably be able to guess that she was the one who did that thumbnail. I know we talked about this a little bit before, but Izzy did the thumbnail for my Nashville vlog, and that also has done unusually well. I've done travel vlogs in the past. They usually don't perform super great. I don't know how much of this is the fact that it was with other booktubers, but even when I've done that too, they haven't performed amazing. Is it something about the like full body picture that's more attention grabbing? I don't know, but this has definitely gotten more views than what I often would expect from this kind of a video. Let's also take a look at the stats for my mid-month wrap-up. As a reminder, Brianna from Four Paws in a Book did this one, and again, I think this looked really good. It turned out really well. And it looks like in terms of click-through rate, this has performed about the same as my other mid-month wrap-ups, so on par with what I would expect. In terms of the live streams, it's a little bit harder to gauge any comparisons. So Jess from the Hext Library did this great thumbnail for my book Unhaul and adding things to my Pango shelves, which has done pretty well, but I haven't done a video like this in the past, so it's hard to know what to compare it to. Brianna also did my Goodreads live reaction thumbnail, and that has performed at about expected rates. This is another one that I think is interesting though, is you have like some of the books in the background, so you can see, you know, a handful of the things of what to expect. Rachel from Reads with Rachel came in again, thank you Rachel, and did the Fool's Errand book discussion from Robin Hobb. So this is what that looks like. I feel like these kinds of things are so niche though, you never get a huge audience, and this was no different, but it's kind of hard to make a book discussion for a niche book something that's very clickable for people who aren't already kind of invested in the series. So, you know, like, I don't know that I had super high expectations going in. We are more than halfway through this project. It's been really fun and really interesting. Again, I haven't gotten any comments about it. I haven't gotten people wondering what's going on with my thumbnail aesthetics. Does this mean that I just don't have enough of a consistent aesthetic on my own? I don't know. I think it's kind of interesting. But it's been cool to see what things work and what things don't, and playing around with the thumbnail in conjunction with the way that you title videos. And I'm curious to see how the rest of the project wraps up this month. So I'll check back in once we've got a few more thumbnails to talk about. Welcome back. It's the end of the project and I've got a lot to wrap up. It is now early November. All of the videos and all of the thumbnails have gone up aside from this reveal video, and I've got a lot. It's been about a month since I did an update, probably because October ended up being a much more intense month for me than I was expecting. I had New York City Comic Con, I had to get a root canal, there was Halloween, I was prepping for NaNoWriMo, there was a lot going on. I did not have time to do updates, but that's okay, because now I can come to you with more data than I probably would have had at the time. We're gonna go in order through all of the rest of the thumbnails and see how they performed. I did a video recommending 15 cozy fantasy books, and this thumbnail was created by none other than Elliot Brooks. Elliot Brooks is especially well known for her fantasy content and some sci-fi content. She is a pretty well-known booktuber, so again, I feel like you've probably heard of her. She's also published a book, and I think you can definitely see how the thumbnail she made for me fits into the trend of how she makes her own thumbnails. I really like what she did with this thumbnail. It's vibrant, it's eye-catching. She used art from a relevant book that is well known as being cozy fantasy, which I think immediately gives you the idea of what the video is about. The text is really clean and easy to see. I think this is fantastic, and in fact, it did perform a little bit better than what I would expect for this kind of a book recommendation video. The views were a little bit higher than what I would expect by this point of having a book recommendation video out, and the click-through rate was also a little bit higher than usual. So something about this formula works. I don't know how much of it is the fact that we've got art from Legends and Lattes, which people immediately associate with it, and I think that's gonna draw in the right crowd. But also I just think this entire thumbnail looks fantastic. Then we have the thumbnail that has been the most guessed in terms of patrons figuring out who made it. And I think it's because this creator has such an iconic style, it's really easy to pick out of a lineup in a way that's not necessarily true for everybody. This is the thumbnail for my Swordcatcher vlog, the first adult fantasy book we've gotten from Cassandra Clare. And this, if you couldn't already tell, was made by Leanna at Leanna's Library. This is totally Leanna's style. Font that she uses, the placement of things. I feel like if you know Leanna's content, you can look at this and immediately figure out that she is the one who made it. Leanna famously hates everything except when she likes it, and then she really loves it. So she's not going to give you a lot of 3-star reads. It's going to be 1-star or a 5-star a lot of times, but she also does quite a bit of discussion of various pieces of media, television shows, and she's always super entertaining. And in fact, this video has definitely performed better than similar videos that I've done reading vlogs for individual books. The click-through rate is higher, the number of views is higher, and I'll say that for most of these videos, when I say higher, they're not dramatically higher. It's not like I have a video that's all of a sudden going viral. I will say there are a couple of standouts we're going to talk about at the end of this project of 2 videos that have done much better than I would have expected them to, but we'll come back to that. This one was better than expected to a moderate degree, and I do think it's effective. What's interesting about this is that the book is very big. You clearly know what book I'm going to be reading for it. It takes up half of the thumbnail. Then you have the text, I have thoughts, this raises questions. What did I think about it? Are they positive or negative? You don't really know till you watch the video. And this is of course a photo of me looking incredibly haggard because I had stayed up late reading the book. So I feel like all of this comes together for a thumbnail that works pretty well and seems to be clickable. Then I posted my second read it or unhaul video. This is part of a series I've been doing, and Ashley at Bookish Realm is the one who made this thumbnail, where I pick like 11 or 12 books, read a few chapters, decide which ones I want to DNF and which ones I want to continue with, and then basically either read till I'm finished or read till I decide to DNF and discuss the process. This one was specifically focused on queer romances, and so as I mentioned before, anything that is explicitly queer doesn't tend to perform as well, which is actually part of why in the title for this video, I tried not including queer or LGBT in the description, but I think from the thumbnail, you can tell that it is because you have kind of the rainbow behind me. And I am gonna say, I think that the choice to not include those terms was to its benefit. Is it really unfortunate that that's the case here on YouTube? Yeah, definitely, but it does seem to help. So in terms of how this video performed, I would say that it is underperforming slightly in comparison to my previous Read It or Unhaul video, but it's doing pretty well considering that it's focusing on queer titles, just because those videos tend not to do very well. Ashley is a longtime booktuber and a librarian focused on children's books. She reads a lot of Black love romance, a lot of YA and middle grade, manga, comic books, a wide range of things, and she does some fantastic, really smart discussion videos as well. If you're not already following her, please go do so. I think the thumbnail is great. It matches the style that Ashley typically does for her own thumbnails, and I like it. I think it was good. Then I did a live version of a mid-month wrap-up talking about the books that I read in the first half of October. This thumbnail was created by Jessie, the Bookish Mom. I think the design is really cute. I will say that as a mid-month wrap-up, this video has definitely underperformed, but it's a little bit difficult to tell if it's because it was on live, which is not typical for me. I usually don't do these live, and I will say that when I have done them live, they usually don't do as well as the sit down, film, and edit versions of them. But the other thing about it is that because I was doing it live, the thumbnail didn't have like a big stack of books I was holding up. This thumbnail, while really cute, I think is a little bit hard to tell what it's actually for. But to be fair, it's not like Jessie had a whole lot to work with. It was kind of like, hey, I'm doing this live stream. Please make something. And I did tell her that I had heavily read romance in the first half of the month, and I think you see that reflected in the thumbnail. Jessie is also a big fan of science fiction and fantasy, so if you want some interesting recommendations, I would check her out. I also like getting recommendations from her sometimes of sci-fi fantasy with mom characters, because I know both of us share an enjoyment of that. Then we have the reason I had to do this live, and that is because I was at New York City Comic Con, and so I needed a thumbnail for my New York City Comic Con vlog, and this was created by Jess Owens. I think there's a lot going on in this thumbnail, but you do have Victoria Schwab very prominently featured, which is cool because I was able to go to a meet and greet with her, and that's documented in the video. And I think you just see a variety of the things that I did. But you also have these big block letters of text, New York City Comic Con vlog, so it's obvious what the video is for. How did it do? It did pretty much as expected. These videos historically have not performed very well for me, and part of this is probably the fact that my audience is mostly here for books, and I don't know that they necessarily expect there to be a lot of literary content in the New York City Comic Con vlogs. Spoiler, there is. There's actually a lot of book-related content, but these typically don't do very well, and I feel like both the views and the click-through rate on this video were kind of in line with what I would expect. And that I think is interesting because the thumbnail was done by somebody who gets pretty good clicks on her videos. I think it's an eye-catching thumbnail, it's a good thumbnail. But one conclusion that I think I've reached with this project is that a good thumbnail definitely helps, but it primarily is going to help on videos that the algorithm is already expecting from you. It isn't going to suddenly get you a ton of extra reach on something that is outside of your wheelhouse. So for something like a pop culture vlog, on a channel where I don't do a lot of vlogs, I don't talk a lot about pop culture, and yeah, there are a lot of book things related to the video, YouTube is like, what is this? We don't know what you're doing. So even a really good thumbnail is only gonna do so much for you. Jess Owens is best known for her book Community, where she talks about all of the drama and major news in the book community, but she also likes reading. She does fantasy, she does some romance, and she's just wonderful, and y'all should go follow her, but you probably already do. Next, I did a live stream talking about updates to my Patreon and channel memberships, as well as some of my plans for next year, projects I'm working on, that kind of a thing. And this thumbnail was done by Tori Morrow, so thank you so much to her. Tori is another booktuber who reads mostly science fiction and fantasy, and and I've gotten some really great recommendations from her. I feel like she reads a mix of things that are super popular and things that are a little bit more off the beaten path. So she is for sure a go-to for those genres. This live stream performed about as expected. This is another kind of video that historically doesn't perform super well, and it makes sense, right? It's a smaller subset of my audience that is interested in what I'm doing for Patreon, and the appeal of this is not nearly as broad as some other things. And so the click-through rate and the views on this are very similar to previous times that I've done this kind of thing in the past. I think the thumbnail she made was great. It's just that this is going to reach a more niche part of my audience, and I think it did that effectively. The next video I did also performed pretty much as expected. This was my New York City Comic-Con book haul. I typically do a dedicated haul video just for that because it's so many books, especially advanced reader copies and giveaways. I always end up coming home with so many books from New York Comic-Con, and the thumbnail for this video was done by a book fiend named Mel, so thank you to Mel for that. Mel is an Australian booktuber, which is really cool, and she also reads kind of a range of things, but a good bit of science fiction, fantasy, some other stuff, and she's been doing these booktuber book rec videos that have been kind of cool. Definitely go and check her out if you get a chance. I think it's really cute. You can't tell from the thumbnail at all that it's specifically a Comic-Con book haul. This just looks like any kind of general book haul thumbnail, which is fine. I told everybody to basically do whatever they would typically do for their own thumbnails, and I think it definitely matches what she's done for stuff on her own channel. This video performed very much as expected. It got similar views and a similar click-through rate to other book hauls. Pretty happy with how that went. The next one I think is really interesting. I did my November TBR video talking about my reading plans for the month, and the thumbnail for this was made by Merrily Kristen. And I specifically took this photo, which is in front of a different bookshelf and showing more of my torso than I usually show in my thumbnails, because that's the way that Kristen does all of her thumbnails, standing in front of her bookshelf. So I was trying to kind of mimic it, because the idea is to try to have these creators do something in their own style, and that's definitely what Kristen did here. Kristen used to be known as Super Space Chick, but she has since rebranded, and she reads a lot. She reads pretty widely, definitely sci-fi, fantasy, romance, other things, but she does vlogs, she talks about bookish news and TV adaptations. She's got a lot of different content she makes, and she's great. Now, what I think is really interesting about the performance of this thumbnail is that the views on the video are a little bit lower than I would typically expect for a TBR video, but the click-through rate is actually higher than I would typically expect for this kind of video, which tells me that this thumbnail is actually very effective. People who are seeing it are liking it and are clicking on it, but for whatever reason, YouTube just hasn't been showing the video to as many people as they typically do for my TBR videos. That's an algorithm thing that could be for a wide variety of reasons. It's hard to know for sure, but I think it's interesting that in terms of clicks, this style of thumbnail is actually performing better than I would typically expect. I don't know if it's because I'm showing more of my body. I know we looked earlier at that Nashville thumbnail that had the full body shot in the middle of it, and that one has performed really well. So maybe there's something to that, something about these more of your body or full body shots doing better sometimes. I feel like there could be something there, but it was interesting. Okay, just 3 more thumbnails to talk about. We did a Halloween live show for the Blades and Bodice Rippers book club that I do along with Mara from Books Like Whoa, Amanda from The Naughty Librarian, and Leanna from Leanna's Library. This is always really fun because we dress up in costume related to the books, and it's just a really good time. But I do feel like the audience for these book clubs is a little bit niche. They do get more viewers, and maybe it's because of the costumes and the guests and consistency, but they do get more viewers than some of my other read-along videos, but nothing really huge. This thumbnail was made by Heather at Hia Booktubes. Huge shout out to her for coming in at the last minute to do this, because I, for some reason, even though I had this event on my calendar, failed to remember that it was on my channel, which means I needed a thumbnail for it. And then I was like, oh shit. So Heather was like, yeah, sure, cool, I'll do it. I was like, thank you so much. It turned out great. I think she did a good job, and the video ended up performing just as expected. Heather reads primarily romance, and she is the DNFing queen. She DNFs so much, which I have the utmost respect for. She also does interesting conversation videos on her channel. She'll get people together for panel discussions. She talks about purity culture sometimes. I just think she's really great and a really underrated small booktube channel. Definitely go check her out. The day before actual Halloween, I released my annual horror movie watching and review vlog, which was focused just on A24 movies this year because of the ongoing SAG-AFTRA strike. And the thumbnail for this video was done by Bookborn, and she was even kind enough to send along a video showing how she made it.
Hey, it's Bookborn here. Thanks, Bethany, for having me make you a thumbnail. First, ignore the elitist hanging out above Bethany's head. I always open a previous thumbnail to start from, so that was from another video of mine. So when I make a thumbnail, I try to keep in mind what is going to make someone click on this video. In this case, since we're doing movie reviews, I want to put all of the movie posters on because that is most likely to be the thing that someone will be drawn to or is looking for. It's also important to remember how small thumbnails are. You want to keep them clean and not too busy so your elements stand out. With 5 movie posters, that means I probably can't add other elements. I make the decision pretty quickly to not have any text on the thumbnail for that reason. I start with the movie posters as big as possible behind Bethany, but then it ends up somehow feeling cluttered, so I wanted to try something else where I made them smaller. I wanted to try to add something spooky horror, so I thought about trying blood in the background. I also like to have subtle texture in the background of every image of a thumbnail to make it look more interesting and a little bit more professional. I ended up getting rid of the blood. It ended up being too much, but went with a nice red background. I also added some contrasting color with the gold, and then this simple thumbnail was finished up. From start to finish, this took me about 35 minutes between making all sorts of decisions and trying new things. Making thumbnails is one of my least favorite parts of the YouTube process, only because it's so difficult to come up with new ideas and things that will seem clickable in such a small space. I did the best I could, Bethany. I hope you like this style. I'm always trying to iterate on my thumbnails, so they may look different in the future. This was a really fun project, and I loved seeing everybody's takes on a thumbnail.
Bookborn's channel has a lot of video essays, long-form reviews of specific books, and content talking about adaptations of books, and she primarily focuses on the science fiction and fantasy genres. It's something a little bit different from what you would typically expect from BookTube, but she's got interesting videos that really stand out and do very well. I think where the thumbnail landed is fantastic. It is eye-catching, it's clickable, it's really clean looking. You can tell what I'm going to be talking about. But as I said earlier, even a really good thumbnail is not going to do too much to help you with the algorithm when it's content that is not something that you do all the time. And that was pretty much the case here. This performed about as I expected in terms of both views and click-through rate. These kinds of videos don't tend to perform very well. I feel like I have a small but dedicated audience who loves them, and I really enjoy making them, so I continue to do it. But because talking about films is not my bread and butter, and because it's horror, which is an even more niche audience, there just aren't as many views or clicks on these kinds of videos. That said, I think it's a great thumbnail. Lastly, I did my November book haul, and the thumbnail for this was made by Kara at Wild Book Garden.
As Wild Book Garden, and when I was doing Bethany's thumbnail, I wanted it to be sort of like in the same series as my thumbnails, but I wanted to give her like her own kind of design too, because the way I do mine, I sort of create a few different like templates. Like I think a lot of people do it like this, and then there's like a few kind of color schemes that I swap the images that I use for my thumbnails like in and out of. So I kind of base it off of like the colors that I'm wearing or anything like that, something that I just think would look nice. And so I kind of did that same thing as if I was creating like a new template. So in the same family, but kind of different. So I kind of went off of the like bluish colors that were in the thumbnail that Bethany provided me with, and I used like flowers in the corners. I always do that kind of like 2 decorated corners and then 2 that just have like the lines, because I think like framing it like that, kind of like photograph style almost, I just like how that looks. That's how I tend to do mine. And then I also do the same format for like the colored backgrounds where I put the text on for the thumbnail as well. And then I also don't do this every time, but sometimes I throw in like a little seasonal thing or like a fun thing like related to the video, like a little kind of image. So I did that with some like a cozy drink of something, because you know, October book haul, I thought it was a appropriate since it is fall in the Northern Hemisphere. So yeah, that's how I did it, and I'm excited to see how the whole project comes together. It was a lot of fun doing this.
Kara has a really cozy vibe to her channel, and she reads a mix of classics, cozy fantasy, a lot of middle grade, and I feel like she really focuses on reading books that are off the beaten path, things that not everybody's reading, not everybody is talking about. So I think if you're looking for unique or indie recommendations, she's a great person to go to. This I thought was pretty interesting. It's a fairly simple thumbnail. The text is kind of small, but this is actually done pretty well. The number of views is about what I would expect for a TBR video, and the click-through rate is actually a little bit higher than I would typically expect for something like this. I do think that this gives cozy vibes. It's very clearly bookish, and that is on brand for me. So maybe it makes sense that this did fairly well. All the thumbnails that these incredible creators made for me over the last 2 months, thank you so much again to all of you for the work that you put into these. You really did a fantastic job, and it has been so interesting to see how things do. The two most unusually high-performing videos of this entire project are these ones. We have the Nashville travel vlog that was made by Izzy at Happy for Now, and we have this wrap-up video with the thumbnail made from Amanda at the Naughty Librarian. So if it was a competition, I guess y'all would win. But these two really exceeded expectations, and I think there are a few lessons we can take away from this. One is that maybe I should consider at least 4 vlogs where I'm going out and doing things or traveling, including full body shots in my thumbnail. And I do think that in general, the entire setup of this is really eye-catching because you have these 4 quadrants that are giving you peeks into what I did on the trip, who I was with, but then you've got me very prominently in front. And I just think that this all comes together in a way that's cohesive and seems to be very eye-catching and has done unusually well. I also think a clear takeaway is that there's a reason that clickbait thumbnails tend to do pretty well. And that's not to say I think you should lie in your thumbnails, but that there might be something to be said for when you're able to pulling a quote or pulling something out of the actual content of the video that is shocking or creates questions in people's minds or is controversial, that there is something about that that is quite effective for a thumbnail. Like I said, we have certainly clarified that even a great thumbnail is not going to make content that doesn't typically perform well on your channel suddenly perform amazingly well. It's possible that it might do a little bit better than usual, but a great thumbnail on its own is not going to revolutionize the algorithm in your favor, at least as a one-off. I also think coming out of this, there is something to be said for thumbnails that make it really clear what the video is about. You don't want people to have to guess or squint to read the text. If you can make it really bold and eye-catching and obvious what it is that you're talking about, that is going to tend to do pretty well. There is definitely something to be said for keeping it clean and simple where there's not a lot of added clutter, but not necessarily. I do think we're seeing some things with a lot of added flourishes that give kind of a cozy vibe can also do pretty well. So it just depends on what the video is, what the vibe is, and what content people expect from you on your channel. Overall though, this was a really fun project. It was a little difficult to not have any creative control over what my thumbnails were gonna look like, but I do think I came away from this with some real insight that could help moving forward, and hopefully this will also be interesting to all of you. Of course, I could not have done this without all of the incredible creators who were willing to give of their time and make all of these beautiful thumbnails for the project, so huge thanks to them. I hope that you'll go and check them all out. I'll have them all tagged in the video description down below, and like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, there is a playlist where you can go and watch all of the different videos in case you missed some along the way, and I'm going to be going back and tagging all of the creators who made the thumbnails in those videos in case you're interested in who they are. I would love to hear from you in the comments down below. Did you notice anything weird? Did you wonder what was up with my thumbnails and just not say anything, or are you completely surprised and shocked by this? What did you think of how the project went? Are there any takeaways that you noticed that maybe I didn't mention? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like this video, it always helps if you give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you want to see more. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.